So in today's video, we're going to talk about why so many men feel lost right now and what we can start doing to find direction and purpose. My name is Christopher, and I'm a therapist who works with men, and let's get into it. So to start off this video, I do want to just share a quotation by Carl Jung that I think helps speak to a little bit about what we are going to talk about today. Carl Jung says, "The man who looks outside dreams, and the man who looks inside awakens." And so I thought that this quote, cliche and overused as it is, really sort of helps touch on what we're going to be speaking about today. So I also want to share a couple of statistics here that I think are really interesting surrounding men. The first one is that 1 in 3 men report feeling lonely. That comes from a YouGov survey in 2021. I think that that's extremely significant considering that basically 33% of our adult male population currently feels lonely. I do see that as an epidemic. That's not something to be taken lightly. Also, a Harvard study found that 1 in 5 single men say that they do not have close friendships. The number of close friends for men has dropped significantly in the last 30 years. And only 22% of men reported getting emotional support from the friend in the past week, compared to 45% of women. So I want to talk about maybe why some of these statistics have developed and kind of why we're at where we're at today with men feeling a little bit lost in today's world. I think there are a couple factors of this. I think one of the most significant factors comes from the fact that, even 50 years ago, there were very strict and rigid gender roles. Men derived a huge sense of purpose from being breadwinners, the caretaker of the home in terms of earning the money, going out, doing certain tasks. I think all throughout history, due to survival reasons, men and women have had fairly strict cultural roles. They may have been different in different cultures throughout the world, but for the most part, men were the ones seen as the breadwinners, whereas women were seen as a little bit more, somebody to sort of be the homemaker and take care of things going at home, taking care of the children. Now, obviously, this wasn't the case in every single household. And then through the evolution that we've had in the last 50 years, where women have become more dominant in the workplace, which is actually a very good thing and a huge stride for women moving forward, is that now men are typically finding themselves in places where they may feel insignificant due to their financial resources in some capacity. More women are now attending college and undergraduate college than men are today. Women are moving up in fields. Women are starting to earn more money than men. And so why this is significant is because this old identity that we as men have had of connecting ourselves to finances and resources is no longer sustainable to a new, more flexible, diverse world moving forward. And so I also want to talk about another issue why men perhaps feel lonely today, not just this identity crisis around role, but also the identity crisis around not having any deep emotional connections with our fathers. Somebody who really talks about this is the poet Robert Bly. He wrote a book called Iron John, and basically he laid out this argument or this theory in Iron John that before the Industrial Revolution, we as boys, as men, had connection to our fathers. We were out working the fields with him. Most of our culture was, in fact, an agrarian society. It was an agricultural society. And we were out with our fathers all day long. We were learning how to absorb, how to be a man in the world just by spending time with him. And after the Industrial Revolution, that basically displaced the father. Now the father's going to work, the father's going to the factory. In today's world, the father going to the office or out and about for the day. And the boy no longer has that direct access to the father. And in that place, all of a sudden is created sort of like this dark understanding. By dark, I mean just lack of knowledge of what happens in the father's world. And essentially why that is significant is that there's something inside of our psyche that absorbs material, absorbs information, absorbs energy through spending time with our fathers, through having a masculine presence. Now, some of us may have had physical access to our fathers. Some of us may have not had a father in the household, which is another crisis that's going on as well, as just fatherless homes. However, those of us who did have fathers in the home may not have even had an emotionally present father who was in the home. And so, there are two forms of abandonment that we work with. We have the physical abandonment, somebody actually physically leaving the home. We also have the emotional abandonment as well. Maybe we had a father who was in, the thralls of addiction, or a father perhaps who worked overextensively and did not have the capacity or the resources to connect with the son in the same way. And so a couple of points that Robert Bly basically talks about is that he says that we're left with too much mother, that we absorb a lot of our reality through the mother. And this isn't a bad thing. We need to develop our feminine, have connections with our mother. However, in ancient culture, there's a point when boys were removed from tribal society to go out for a rite of initiation. They were removed from the mother and taken into the father's world through a rite of passage, through perhaps something dangerous, through some sort of split in the psyche that allowed them to understand I'm no longer in the realm of the mother, of the boy, of the womb. I'm now in the realm of the man. And to be taken in by other men. In today's culture, we don't have, older boys who are taking us away from the home to be men. And I'm not suggesting we need to have that same sort of ritual, but I am suggesting to create spaces, that allow for us to reconnect with older men. Robert Bly talks about that we live in a horizontal society as opposed to a vertical society, meaning that we're not interacting with our grandfathers, with our fathers, with our uncles, and then with those nephews below us. We're only interacting with our particular generation. Whereas in generations previous, we were interacting with each one of these members to learn the different stages of adulthood, of manhood. Whereas now we are trying to teach ourselves through our own generation, which ends up resulting in, massive failure of perhaps misogyny, of gang culture, violence. We as men can feel that there's something off, and yet we don't know quite what that is. And so essentially the point that I'm trying to make here is that we haven't been initiated. And there's an aspect of our male psyche that requires that initiation into adulthood, into manhood. We do have some forms of it. For, Jewish culture, there's the bar mitzvah. We also have certain rites of passage, you could say, like getting a driver's license at a certain age or hitting drinking age. There's certain rites of passage in our society at different ages, but there isn't the ceremony or the context to actually allow for that split. Although these customs may be like the bar mitzvah, for example, could be an incredible tradition, there maybe isn't quite that same level of sure that creates the psychic split to allow for a boy to understand they're a man. And so I think that it's really important that we somehow develop these spaces as older men, but also looking to older men asking for guidance as well. And so I suggest that as we move forward as men, that we start connecting with other men. Part of the reason that there's a loneliness epidemic is because we haven't been taught, we haven't learned how to connect with other men. Other men might be seen as aggressors or sexual competitors or sexual objects or whatever it might be, and starting to learn to see other men as brothers, as one of our own kind, as people that we can support and lean on. I know that from myself working in and leading men's groups, that some of the deepest connection I felt is in these spaces where I'm allowed to be vulnerable and deeply grieve and wail and laugh with other men. And these are the spaces that I think are really important for each of us to cultivate. In our modern culture, we never moved from that boy to manhood. We kind of just attended school and then maybe went to college or maybe went to the workforce. There was never something that actually signified that we were adults. So we have a lot of boys running around in a man's body and at the age of a man. And basically what that can lead to is, a life of difficulty connecting to discipline, of direction, a sense of purpose. Really, we're kind of in what we might call like a numbing epidemic right now. So I think that there are many ways that this is showing up right now. I think it's showing up, through the use of pornography, through the use of social media, and through the use of drugs and alcohol and marijuana. I think that all of this is in reaction to escape emotions that are going on inside of us. Because as men, nobody taught us how to feel. I know growing up as men that in the culture that I grew up in, I heard things like boys don't cry, man up, stand, be strong. It wasn't okay to show any sign of weakness. Personally, I, was shamed by my friends anytime that I would cry because I felt left out or felt that I was, being taken advantage of or somebody was being mean to me. I got shamed for expressing my emotions in those moments. So I learned to not show emotions, to put up walls and defenses. And at the time, that was, what I needed to do to survive. But long term, it didn't help me in my relationships. It didn't help me connect with other men, with women. It didn't help me in my romantic and emotional relationships. And it didn't help me because I started to develop my own coping mechanisms through various addictions in my life, trying to ease and soothe the pain. When in reality, what's required of me is to just feel what's going on in each moment, moment to moment, which is so much easier said than done. But for me, giving myself permission to cry, to laugh and to be playful and to have spontaneity. And at the same time, to also develop boundaries and discipline and routine to help create a life for my inner child, for my adult self, for all these aspects of who I am inside. And so, I think that it's important that we understand sort of what happened to us. Now we can kind of talk about a little bit how we can start developing direction. I think one of the most incredible practices that anybody can start doing if they're looking to develop direction or a sense of clarity in their life is to start meditating. When I started meditating, I just started meditating 5 minutes a day. That's all it takes. And during those 5 minutes, you can go find a guided meditation on YouTube. You can also just focus on your breathing for 5 minutes, just seeing what it's like to tap into your body, focus on the breath. And anytime a thought comes and goes, you just allow it to be there. Meditation is an incredible practice for helping us to connect with ourselves, to find stillness, and to start connecting to peace, as opposed to just allowing unconscious dynamics to control and run our lives. I also think another incredible tool is to start journaling. Start journaling with yourself, start dialoguing, maybe start different lists, start to get to know yourself. I know for me, especially when I'm anxious or worried, that when I journal, it's an incredible tool, but it also helps me to keep track of my story. Over time, it helps me to see growth and progress and helps me to orient my day, but also my path moving forward. Another incredible tool I really do recommend, Jordan Peterson has a self-authoring program called Future Authoring. It's only $15. It's an incredible tool. It takes, just a day of your time to go through to really orient yourself for the next 5 to 10 years. So if you're looking for that, I'll put a link in the description. It's an incredible tool that you can use. Another tool that I think is really important is seeking male mentors, seeking people who are walking the path, seeking people who can help guide you through this stage. Could be somebody older, somebody that you look up to, somebody that you respect. Finding somebody who's not just successful in a financial sense, but who has a deep sense of presence, who can embody kindness and love and caring. Maybe somebody who has a healthy relationship that you look up to as well, that you'd like to cultivate in your life. Start spending time with these people, asking them questions, having the humility to say, I don't know what I'm doing, and leaning on them for support. And so really kind of just to tie this into that quote we shared at the beginning, this is the process of no longer looking to the outside world. It's the process of starting to come within, to start being who we are, and to stop listening to the outside world to tell us who to be. And it takes deep strength and courage and presence. And if you'd like any support with this, as I mentioned, I'm a therapist who works with men. If you'd like to work one-on-one with me, I will include my link in the description below. You can schedule a free call with me. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to catching you in the next one. Take care.